Hello and welcome to Split Screen. On today's episode, I'm going to review Star Trek Online.
And I'll be reviewing Warlords of Draenor.
And then after that, Dom's going to take us over to the couch where we're going to talk about MMO gaming today.
This is our chance. Storm the portal!
Warlords of Draenor is the 5th expansion pack in Blizzard's MMO, World of Warcraft. Warlords is set 30 years in the past in an alternate timeline form of the planet Draenor. Players face off against the Iron Horde, created in this alternate timeline by the Orcish clans joining together after refusing to drink the blood of a demon lord. Grommash Hellscream, a familiar face to players of the RTS games, leads this threat to Azeroth's safety. After being introduced to leaders of the Iron Horde in a flashy opening quest chain, players are given the opportunity to get started with garrisons. As the much anticipated new feature of the expansion, garrisons provide a customizable home base for each one of your characters. Garrisons allow you to construct and upgrade buildings of your choosing and recruit followers who can go on missions for you. I like the follower system a lot. It isn't terribly robust, but as a longtime player, I was delighted to find new and familiar heroes that call me Commander. You can even recruit the infamous Leroy Jenkins. Follower missions grant rewards like gold and even raid-level armor from the rarest missions. These take place over real time, even when you're logged off, and it gives me an excuse to log on every couple of hours to assign a new batch of missions. This usually leads into me playing for longer periods of time. Garrison buildings are less fantastic than advertised. While there are many options to fill your large, medium, and small plots, only a few are terribly useful in the long term. While the game totes a sense of choice in the garrisons, I find myself building the same selection on each of my characters, with minor variations depending on their professions. The expansion also introduced new character models for the oldest races, which are a welcome addition while you spend hours questing your way to level 100, the new cap. The quests are typical MMO style, but I enjoyed them all the same. I enjoyed them enough that I made sure to finish each zone before progressing to the next. The new zones look great. There are dense jungles, rocky wastelands, moonlit forests, and one zone is made of vast snowy plains right next to a whole lot of lava. It makes no sense, but it sure looks awesome. Another of my favorite new features is the pre-made group finder. This tool makes starting a raid group, achievement group, or whatever you want easier than ever. The tool functions across servers, and I've used it several times to join groups looking to complete old achievements or who are doing the world raid bosses on Draenor. Warlords offers a lot of content to make a variety of players happy. Raiders have 2 raids and 17 diverse bosses to kill on 3 difficulties: normal, heroic, and mythic. Collectors will find a lot of new toys, pets, and mounts to acquire. More casual players will find the infamous looking for raid to be easier than it's ever been. Groups rarely die, which is honestly fine by me. With the purchase of Warlords, players are granted a free character boost to level 90, so you can dive right into the new content. All in all, Warlords is a slightly confusing, but still highly enjoyable expansion pack that I can wholeheartedly recommend.
Star Trek Online is an MMO that originally launched in 2010 for the PC. Ran by Cryptic Studios and Perfect World Entertainment, it went free-to-play rather quickly after it launched. In the game, you take control of the commander of a starship for either the Klingon Empire, the Romulans, or the United Federation of Planets from the classic television and movie franchise, Star Trek. Taking place several years after the 10th film, Nemesis, things have gone awry and the whole galaxy is yet again plunged into war. The majority of the gameplay is focused on ship-to-ship combat in deep space. It feels like what would happen if you combined a flight simulator with World of Warcraft. You have free reign to move about in 3D space, up, down, and so on, but all combat actions are mapped to the number keys. What abilities you are able to do depend on what weapons you have equipped to your ship and what crew members you have assigned to what consoles. Crew members are non-player characters who each have their own stats and abilities and level much like a player character. Once you transport down to the surface of the planet, it switches to a fairly standard MMO. Only now you're being followed by up to 4 of those crew members, who assist you in your objectives. They aren't the most intelligent of followers, but they rarely get in your way. As you gain levels, you are able to access bigger and better ships. For example, on the Federation side, you start out with a fairly small Miranda-class vessel, and eventually make it all the way to a Sovereign-class battlecruiser. Each ship has more and more options for customization on how your ship operates, which makes for a rather rewarding experience. The downsides of Star Trek Online, though, are both the repetitive nature of the missions and the fact that the multiplayer features are lacking. Every mission basically breaks down to the exact same formula. Go to a place, fight some dudes in space, go down to the planet, kill some more dudes, and go back up to the space and fight a bigger dude. Almost every single time. The game also feels very solitary, as the game's missions are designed to be done by one person, and the in-game content is extremely lacking. Outside of PvP and some deep space battles, there's really nothing to do with other people. Overall, Star Trek Online is a fun experience in short bursts, but it isn't good over a long period of time. You can get it for free on the PC via Steam.
Hello and welcome to the Couch on Split Screen. I'm your host Dom Hassett, and today we'll be talking about MMOs. For those of you who don't know, an MMO is a massively multiplayer online game that includes a persistent world where multiple players can interact in real time. Today we've got some MMO players here to talk about them with us, so go ahead and introduce yourselves.
All right, I'm Laura Hale.
I'm Owen Poole.
I'm John Aljets.
All right guys, so your first MMO experience, tell me about it.
I played MapleStory for like 2 hours.
Oh, nice.
And then I moved on to World of Warcraft when I was 14. That's too many years for me to count.
For me, I had a brief experience with Ultima Online, which was super old. I think I played it when I was 11 or 12 because one of my best friends played it. Didn't really work too well because I had, dial-up internet at the time.
Oh yeah.
But then later on, I started playing World of Warcraft and played that for a number of years.
I basically just, it was RuneScape for me, like a lot of people, probably. I played it with a friend of mine for years. It started off in the classic RuneScape, and then kind of shifted over, and then World of Warcraft after that kind of became the thing.
So you guys all went into World of Warcraft?
Yep.
Yeah.
Still in World of Warcraft.
Still in there. That's great. See, I never got into WoW really, but my first experiences with the MMO scene was really MapleStory. I got really into MapleStory back in middle school, I think. But even a little bit before that, a couple of my friends got me into this game called Tibia. You guys familiar with that at all?
Never heard of that.
Never heard of it.
Yeah,
no.
it's really obscure. Okay, but anyway, it was an older one. It's like little Lego-looking people walking around. It was really low quality. But yeah, MapleStory was the first really big one that I spent so much time in and got lots of bad grades in school because of how much time I spent playing that. So now you guys talking about World of Warcraft, that's a subscription-based game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you pay a certain amount of money a month in order to get all the content. And how much is it right now?
It's
$15.
$15.
Yeah,
15. Has it always been that?
It's always been.
Okay. So, and you got subscription-based games like WoW, really high-quality stuff. But then there's also the free-to-play games that you go in and it's free to access some of the content, but then there's microtransactions within the game. That's where the developers get their money. So, what do you guys think about paying for these games and how the free-to-play structure works, and the sub fee?
I think that it like obviously different games do it different ways. Some games they have a very like pay to win sort of model where like you buy items that you need, and you see a lot of those from like kind of quick and dirty MMOs that were made on low budget that that have come out of like China and Korea and all these places. There's a lot of them. Last Chaos, stuff like that. You see a lot of the pay to win, but then some games like the Old Republic, they have I believe a pretty good free to play model set up where like with them you can purchase subscriber benefits piecemeal, or you could subscribe if you want and get all these different like things like more experience, access to PvP battlegrounds, things like that.
So is the Old Republic, it's not subscription based anymore?
It's not, but you can pay for a subscription if you want.
So and if you do that, you get all the content, no limits at all. But if you don't, you get to pay for what you want to experience.
Yeah, and like...
And it's one-time fees for those?
Yeah, some of them. So it's like, if you're a subscriber, you get an experience bonus and you get, access to all these things. But if you're not a subscriber, you can pay like $20 and you can get the experience bonus. And that's just a flat thing, and you don't have to pay for that ever again.
Yeah.
I personally hate the Old Republic.
You okay?
It's just making him sick over there.
Okay, so you were talking about the Old Republic, Star Wars Old Republic free-to-play model. I personally really, really hate it. I remember playing it when it first came out because all my friends were like, "Oh, we got to play this game. It's so amazing. It's so much better than WoW." I'm like, "Okay, I guess I'll give it a try." And it was pretty fun while it lasted. I don't know. I'm not as into MMOs as I used to be in the past, but I played it on the subscription model, which it was good. It was cheaper than WoW, and all the content was available. There's a lot of content. But when it switched to free-to-play, it was just, the content was so neutered. Like, you only had like 2 character slots. You gained experience slower than subscribers. I don't think you could even get rest at inns and stuff.
You can, but I think it's only a third of what subscribers get.
And it also ruined the in-game economy because you could purchase items with these cartel points that subscription people would get. So that was all that was there on the auction house. It completely ruined the in-game economy, which was really frustrating.
Yeah, so you got that situation where a sub game turns into free-to-play, and I know that just recently happened with the Elder Scrolls Online. That went from a $15 a month subscription fee to free-to-play with the microtransactions within it. I don't know specifically how they get revenue right now, but I know that's what they've been moving towards. And I'm wondering, what do you think makes a developer go from a sub fee to a free-to-play model?
Well, I think it's just that they're losing money and they want people to buy it. They make money with people buying the base game. And when they have a subscription early on, I mean, that's why Old Republic went free to play, was because not enough people were subscribing. So I think it's just kind of, we need people to play our game. They'll buy an expansion if they like it, because every MMO has so many expansions.
Well, I mean, and you look at some games that use the sort of free-to-play model. I mean, even outside of MMOs, you look at League of Legends, and free-to-play microtransactions makes money.
Yeah, microtransactions are big, especially when it's cosmetics. People love cosmetic stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I only really like cash shops if they're like cosmetic items. So I don't like the cash shops that give you, basically more power in the game. The pay to win.
Yeah.
I know ESO is. It's gonna go. You can buy health potions, resurrections, and stuff with cash basically, and so that sounds pretty bad. But the joke about ESO is that they got all the money they were going to get through subscriptions out of the rabid Elder Scrolls fans. So now they're trying to squeeze out a little bit more.
Of course. Yeah, it's those games that really just, if you are rich, then you can just pay all this money to get 100% experience bonuses all the time and just go to max level really quickly, where everyone else who can't afford all of that kind of stuff has to work at it and earn their levels rather than just buying power. I think that really it causes an imbalance in the player base.
You can do that in World of Warcraft now. You can just pay to advance your character to level 90.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
$60.
$60.
1 to 90.
And for some people, it's worth it, I guess.
Well, and everybody who purchased the Warlords expansion got a free 90.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, like, I can understand their reasoning is a little bit like we want to get people to the end game because the end game.
The game's where
with World of Warcraft, like, that's where everyone's friends are. That's, I mean, especially the game.
because people have been playing for so long.
Well, I mean, the game's over 10 years old. So, like, everyone who's real serious into World of Warcraft is at the end of the game. And so, like, that's where everyone's friends are. So, everyone wants to get there really quick. So, buying this straight to 90. And I mean, like, the level cap is 100, so you still have 10 levels to learn your character and play your character. So, like, honestly, the boost to 90 doesn't bother me now.
That does incentivize new players to, like, people who've never played the game to, like, join up with their friends right away.
Yeah, so if you pay extra, then you can do that.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I want to talk about is playing with your friends. So in this situation, if all your friends are playing a game, you're not, they're really high level, and you want to get in there with them. If you're at such a level difference, then sure, you can chat and talk to each other, but you can't do the same things in game. But offering players to pay to get to those levels, can help them out playing with their friends, but is it really the way the game's meant to be played?
I mean, you can make the argument, and, like, especially, like, if you look at World of Warcraft, you can see that a lot of the stuff sort of pre-Warlords is dated now because they've changed up how leveling and how everything sort of works in Warlords. So everything before that really is kind of archaic, and with this, it's almost like they're trying to draw attention away from that. They're like, hey, that's cool and that's fine and that's there if you want it. Like, you paid for it all this time, you can do all that content, but we want you to be on the new stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just really them just kind of drawing attention to it. And again, it's a catch-up mechanic. Within game development, one major thing that you have to think about is catch-up mechanics.
Yeah. And so as far as MMOs as a social platform, what do you think about the way these games inspire and encourage social interaction?
It's kind of a mixed bag because, well, with a lot of, like, even with World of Warcraft, you can do so much stuff by yourself now. You don't have to get a group of people. You don't have to get your friends together to kill the raid bosses. You can queue up with 24 other strangers. You don't have to do any of that. You don't really even have to be in a guild anymore to do a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah. And sure, you're playing with all these other people, but you don't necessarily have to talk to them or really interact with them much other than just having them help you fight things. So it's yeah, you have anything to add?
Well, I mean, you're seeing a lot of MMOs kind of go towards play on your own. It even went so far as, like, we were talking about the Old Republic. Well, the Old Republic is, with the exception of endgame stuff and PvP, it is very much a single-player experience.
Okay.
It's you going off and doing stuff on your own. And, like, they don't really encourage you to be doing stuff with people while you're leveling. So you're seeing a lot more MMOs kind of cater to people who don't want to play with people, which is kind of odd considering the context of the game.
Do you remember playing WoW before the looking for group queue?
Oh,
Where you actually had to, like, find people, like, I'm looking for group for this. And then you had to, like, actually physically go to the dungeon.
Oh, wow.
and that wasn't really that long ago. That was Wrath was the last time that was going on.
Yeah, run out all the way to the Summoning Stone, and then Wrath introduced the looking for group, and then Cataclysm LFR looking for raid.
And raids were, back in the day, raids were really happy to have a warlock just because that warlock could summon everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on from the social aspects, narrative in MMOs, I find to be something that they somewhat lack, as far as maybe they have a great backstory, maybe there's a lot of content in there, but the way that they display and tell their narrative, I feel, isn't really as effective as most single player campaign kind of games. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because most players who play MMOs, like every quest that someone gives you, there's a nice little there's a whole story that you have to read, but most people just don't read. They just click accept, they do the objective and come back.
And some of them even have great voice acting that no one listens to.
Right. Well, for me personally, I pretty much stopped playing World of Warcraft after the Wrath of the Lich King expansion because I was introduced to the story. I always loved the story back in Warcraft 3 and the whole story arc of Arthas and the Lich King. and then at the end, the final raid of Wrath of the Lich King, you kill him, and that story's over. And then it continues. There's more lore. There's more lore from like Warcraft 1 and 2. But for me, like my story that I followed was like over. So I really didn't play much WoW after that.
Oh.
And you mentioned your story there, and I think that's one of the main benefits of MMOs is that, yeah, there's the story that like the people define and that the game creators wanted you to kind of be a part of, but they give you the opportunity to kind of have your own stories. And I'm not just talking about role playing. Like you can have like I look at my Death Knight when I played through World of Warcraft, and I can see a beginning of his story, and I can see what I would clarify as the end, kind of the time when his period in that world ended. And you can go out and you can make these stories, and like your time with your friends, things will happen, and you'll wind up with your own stories. They might not be in universe stuff, but I mean, it's a different kind of narrative, but I still think that it is capable of narrative.
So I mean, even if the overarching story of the game isn't necessarily well represented, it is true. You can, forge your own path, make your own story, and get really involved in it. And that brings me to my next topic, is the concept of hyperreality in games, where, there's sometimes some people, and they're playing really in-depth games, especially MMOs. It's a huge time sucker, and they spend most of their days even just really getting involved in this game and really just almost losing themselves. And that's, put up a red flag for some people who don't necessarily play MMOs like a lot. More of the casual gamers just think that's sort of weird. It's like, well, you're just playing a video game all day. So what do you guys think about the way these games can sometimes, for certain people, it's not for everyone obviously, but the way that these games can affect people as far as, taking up all of their time and causing this sort of hyper reality and the loss of, what's really going on in the world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like if you spend a good portion of time with anything, you're going to internalize it, and you're going to make it a part of yourself. I will always be Felgin, the Orc Death Knight from Feathermoon.
Yes.
That's just who I'll always be. I've met people at conventions and stuff who know me as Felgin. That's all they know me as. And like there will always be a little bit of me that will be that old orc who's, always hanging out in a grand. And that's just, I internalize that, and I feel like if you allow it, it can become a part of your identity, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
Well, and think about like who you are in these games. Like you're this heroic figure who, slays all these beasts and then becomes this like this amazing hero with all this gear that is actually like a status symbol in the game. So you have this high status, and those are things you're not really allowed to do in real life. I mean, sure, you can like buy cars and stuff, but how realistic is that? I can pay $15 a month and make this character who's just amazing and gets all these titles, can display it to everyone who plays.
You could be Kaileron the Kingslayer.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think there's a definite appeal to being this character in this game, because you're not going to have the opportunity to do that in your real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can ride around whatever you want. You can be on the back of a dragon. You can be on the back of a two-headed molten dog. You can wear whatever armor you want with the transmogrified. Don't ever know how to say that word. You can make up a costume, customize your character. You can be exactly who you want to be, and that's really fun.
And for some people, that ends up being who they want to be rather than who they are.
Well, I mean, like in the we were talking a little bit earlier about this idea, and we were talking about
The Second Life guy?
the Second Life guy, the guy who within Second Life, he had like a marriage within Second Life.
literally had
He
a
like
Second
he
Life.
like had a family and all this stuff, and it actually got to the point where he left his wife to go for his online wife.
Oh my gosh.
And like
See, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Stuff like
you see
that.
people like that who internalize it maybe a little bit too much.
He had a
Yes.
full-on business in the game.
Yeah.
That he was
Wow.
making tons of fake money, but yet he was kind of like neglecting his real life.
And I feel like that's like the kind of people who are going to be able to be pulled in that much, like that's going to happen to them. like regardless of the type of game. And this is just a game that just makes it really easy to have like a second identity. And so like while not everyone is going to, you know, be like, oh, I really wish I was, you know, a paladin. I'm going to go hit things with hammers. Like
They just don't like themselves.
they just don't like themselves.
They just
So,
want to be anything but themselves.
yeah, it really comes down to an internal discussion.
So huge communities for these games, and these games do facilitate communities pretty well. One way they do that is through gaming language and the lingo and the kind of words that have honestly come into a lot of just casual gamers' own dictionaries as far as gaming goes. So do you guys have any thoughts about that?
Gaming culture is something that really fascinates me. I've been doing a lot of research on cultural development within gaming communities. And like with most cultures, you have a language that comes with it.
Yes.
That's just something like anthropologists, when they're looking at a culture, one of the main ways that they can learn a lot about how people function in their day-to-day life is their language and how they speak. And so naturally, like when you get like a large group of people together, we're going to start referring to things in different ways than we might normally. You know, like you look at some big dude wearing armor and you could just be like, that big dude in armor, or you could be like, that tank, and gamers are going to know what you're talking about.
There's a certain level of like inclusion and exclusion. Like someone new to a game who doesn't understand the language, especially in like a game like League of Legends, which isn't an MMO, but definitely has its own language like to itself. And someone new to the game, and the community of League of Legends is notoriously, I'm just gonna say mean.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna go with mean. There's a lot of words you could use, but
Of course.
someone who's new to the game who doesn't fully understand the language, like they could be getting into a game and it's like, oh, you need to buy Bork or BT, and it's like, I don't know what this means, but
They could just get really turned off because so many people that they're playing with, they're like,
they already know.
they already know,
They're already
and
in.
and you're sort of slowing them down if you don't know the lingo.
Yeah, and that definitely creates communities for good and bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't know the acronyms, you just... The very first time I saw BRB, I stared at it for like 30 seconds. What does this mean? I finally figured, I was like, maybe it means like bathroom break or something, which is honestly what most people are probably doing when they go BRB.
Honestly, I had a similar experience with BRT, with B right there. Like, it took me so long, like, I feel kind of dumb now, but it took me a really long time to kind of finally figure out that was B right there.
And there's some people disagree. Like, I remember there's the acronym WTB, like either want to buy or willing to buy.
Oh.
Some people are like, oh, which one is it? I don't know what it is.
Yeah, because willing and want are two different. You know.
I always said it was want, but apparently some people disagree.
Because want to buy, want to trade, want to sell.
So any last thoughts on MMOs, guys?
I love the concept of MMOs. I've yet to find my own perfect MMO.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that someday I can find a place where I don't have to worry about leveling. I don't have to worry about end game content. I'm just going to go out into a world and just have my own adventure. Like, I want that, and hopefully someday I'll see that.
I don't know, I haven't seriously played an MMO in like maybe 4 or 5 years. It's been that long, yeah. I mean, I have occasionally like jump back into WoW for maybe like a month, but it hasn't.
Not enough for you to pay the
It
sub fee.
hasn't grabbed my attention enough.
Yeah.
Which I think that is to the narrative thing. I'm really into story in games, and it just isn't doing it for me anymore.
Of course.
Yeah, I've played WoW consistently for the past 6 years, I think. And I'll load it up and I think, man, I play this game way too much. Like, I need to play these other games that are sitting in my Steam account.
Yeah.
But then I'll log on and one of my friends will be on and we'll go do something together.
It'll be a great
and
time.
Get a title that I can now display above my character's head that says The Crazy Cat Man. And I'm like, awesome.
All right, guys. Well, thanks very much for the discussion. You've been watching Split Screen, and we'll see you next time on the couch.
Bye.